Hello and welcome to my channel. So in this video, I want to share with you the experience that I've had in terms of implementation of core banking system changeover from the old system to the new system. I've been implementing core banking systems for the last 2 decades, and I thought it's necessary for me to share with you the mindset that you should carry with you in terms of how we are supposed to implement a project that is related to changeover of core banking system from the old system to the new system. So core banking system changeover has never been easy, I can tell you from my experience. It's a very challenging environment, and I can tell you it's actually called a transformational project. It's not like any normal project, because you're going to change so many things in terms of the old way of doing things, the processes, the standard operating procedures. Most of them they're also going to change, and it normally takes a lot of time. Maybe minimum if it's a normal changeover, it's around 18 months from experience. But you can go as far as 2 or 3 years when you try to change the core banking system. So I decided to share with you the kind of mindset that you have to carry with you when you want to implement successfully the core banking system as a project. So in this section of the video, we are going to cover cluster number 4, which is to do with environments in a core banking project environment or core banking project implementation. So there are certain environments which are mandatory, and there are certain environments they are not mandatory, but you need them as complementary to mandatory environments. So let us look at what we are going to cover here. Okay. So we're going to cover different mindsets in this cluster. Okay. So the first one is going to be on infrastructure readiness as a business dependence. And we are also going to look at environments that must be controlled. Okay. We are also going to look at environment stability, okay, and testing confidence. Then also performance and resilience that must be existing. Then we're also going to look at the mindset for security, backups, and also disaster recovery sites. So let's move on. So the first mindset that you should have when you're implementing a core banking system is the infrastructure readiness, okay, which is a business dependence. There is no way you can do anything if your infrastructure is not ready. Infrastructure, we are talking of so many components or technical components. They could be servers, they could be printers, network, and so on and so forth. So why should infrastructure readiness be a business dependence, and why does it matter as a mindset when you're implementing a core banking system? So why does it matter? Business teams cannot test, they cannot even train, they cannot validate anything if the infrastructure underneath the system isn't ready. So this is very important. Why it matters to have this mindset. You should make sure that the infrastructure is ready, because it's going to delay almost everything. So infrastructure delays becomes a business delay. You delay any infrastructure implementation, you're also going to delay the whole business. There's got a business dependency here. So what goes wrong if this mindset is actually ignored? Okay, if you ignore this mindset, infrastructure is treated as a technical plumbing until it delays the whole program. So infrastructure must always be treated as an agency, because everything else that you're going to do is going to rely more on this infrastructure. So what is the correct mindset that you should have as a project manager? No stable environment, it means no reliable build, no reliable migration, no reliable testing, or even training. Let me explain to you. So when you are implementing a core banking system, you need all the environments to be very, very stable. Otherwise, if they're not stable, it will be very difficult to do even end-to-end testing or even to do end-to-end migration. So the correct mindset is to make sure that you always have an infrastructure that is ready and that is also stable to support the project. So let us look at one scenario for a core banking system, CBS. UAT is scheduled to start on Monday. Okay, so there's a schedule to start UAT on Monday. The business team arrived to test, but the environment wasn't refreshed over the weekend. So this is the problem. And half the test accounts are also even missing, which means there was no migration here. Okay. So a full week of planned business testing time is lost. So the environment is not ready. And some of the testing accounts are also missing. So it means the testers cannot go on. So that was going to, or that is going to lead to a full week lost time in terms of testing because the environment was ready. So this mindset is very important. So what are the practical actions that we can take? You need to treat environment readiness as a tracked business dependence and not as an IT task. This is where most people they make a mistake. So environment dependence and setup should be managed by IT and should also be controlled from the project when you're implementing a co-payment system. You should also confirm environment sign-off before any test cycle is actually scheduled to start. So what do you mean by this? So before you start your testing, it has to be confirmed that the environment is ready. We normally use what is called sanity checks. So this is one of the big or important mindset that you should always have. Then the third one is you should escalate infrastructure delays with the same agents as functional defects. So infrastructure is the biggest dependence. So if you don't do anything, you don't escalate if there's a big issue, if you can't do it, or if you can't resolve some issues, most likely you're going to delay the project. So let's move to the next mindset. The next mindset is UAT, SIT, and training, migration, pre-production, and also production environments must be controlled. This is very important, must be controlled. So this is a very important mindset. I'll share with you one of my experience. When we're almost going live, I think about 3 weeks to go live, we realized that our master environment was actually removed. It was not existing anymore. So you might want to understand why, Oscar. It's because the control was not that effective. So it is always important that you control the SIT environment, your EAT environment, training environment, migration environment, pre-production environment, and also even the production environment. By control, we are talking of access. Who has got access to change anything, to upload anything, or even to change some configuration. So that control must be there as a mindset. I can tell you, this is going to save you a lot when it comes to implementation of core banking system. So why does it matter? Uncontrolled environments, it means nobody can trust what passed testing yesterday still works today. So if the environment is not controlled, it means someone cannot trust what has been done. Someone cannot trust what is going on. So it's quite important that when you're implementing a core banking system, you are very much sure of who is accessing the information, who is accessing which environment, and for what purpose, and it has to be controlled. So what goes wrong if these environments are not controlled? Teams, they test on inconsistent environment and they lose confidence. This is very important. So if there's no control, something you tested yesterday, someone is busy loading some other data into the environment, or someone is capturing some new information into the environment, the testing will never be consistent. So it has to be controlled. So what is the correct mindset for the project manager? Each environment must have a purpose, okay, and access, data versions, and also configuration discipline. So each environment must have control. It must have a purpose and must have access controlled, the data, the version, and also the configuration. This is a good mindset. So let us look at an example or scenario that you might come across. A configuration fix, okay? A configuration fix is pushed directly into the UAT environment, which means there's no control, without going through change control, which means there was a fix which was pushed without any control. Then the next morning, 3 previously passed test cases, they failed. This is the inconsistency I was talking about. And nobody can explain why until the untracked change is discovered days later. So this is the reason why we are saying SIT, UAT, training, migration, and pre-production, they must always be controlled. If you don't control them, you are going to have inconsistency in testing. You're going to have different fixes in different environments. So what action activities should you take? You should apply the same change control discipline to environment as to production. This is very important. You cannot wait until you go live for you to start to have the discipline to control environments. It has to start actually when you're doing your project. So you must control what is going into SIT. You must control what is going into AT. you must control what is going into your training environments. So the next action is also you need to maintain a clear environment ownership. Environment must be owned, okay? And a booking system to prevent conflicts. So if someone owns an environment, they are very much interested in knowing what is going in and what is going out, who is accessing and why are they accessing. So it has to be also owned, the environment, whether it's testing, SIT or UAT. Normally, SIT is owned by the technical guys. UAT is owned by the users. Training is also owned by the training team. Migration is owned by the migration team. Then log every change made to shared environment, even if it still seems to be minor. So every change that you're going to make in every environment, make sure it goes through all the other environments. We normally do that through a package. So you have one package which you also deploy in SIT all the way up to production. So let us look at mindset number 3 for this cluster. Environment instability destroys testing confidence. This is very important. So every environment must be stable. It must be confirmed that it's very stable. So why does it matter? When a test environment behaves unpredictably, business users, they stop trusting that environment. Say, for example, something was working yesterday. You were able to open accounts yesterday. Today, you're not able to open. That is going to frustrate and even you're going to lose confidence in the system from the user's perspective. And you start blaming the system for whatever the environment problem is. So environments must be stable. Stability, it touches so many areas. It could be the infrastructure. It could be even the actual operating system. It could be the database. It could be the application, the banking system that you're applying or that you're implementing. So what goes wrong when this mindset is actually ignored? UAT becomes a debate about infrastructure instead of business readiness. So if the environment is not steady, most likely people are going to put the blame on the environment. And in most cases, you find the IT guys, they also become very defensive. So this must not be ignored. Okay, so as a project manager, what mindset should be there? If defects are blamed on environments, then business users, they stop trusting the test process. So if there are any defects and you actually relate it or you're actually assigning to environment issues, it might end up in the whole process of testing being untrusted, because someone will say, why is it something which was working yesterday, I tested it's working, and then today it's no longer working. So the environment should also be trusted by the users. All right. So what scenario can we talk about here? So business testers, they log a defect for a transaction that fails intermittently. Okay. Business testers, they log a defect for a transaction that fails intermittently. After 2 days of investigation, the root cause turns out to be unstable environment refresh process, not the application. So which means the application was okay, but 2 days of testing confidence and time are already lost. Which means there was a defect which was working before, and then sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Then after 2 days of investigation, the root cause was the unstable environment. So even the refresh process was also an issue. And then the application was not actually the issue. So it's quite important to understand this scenario. So what actions can you take? You need to run a documented sanit or even smoke check immediately after every environment refresh. This is very important. If you make any changes in the environment, you need also to run sanity checks to make sure that everything is working. It could be manual or it could be automated. Then you also need to have a separate environment stability issues from functional defects. This is very important. When you are testing the system, you need to separate what is coming out as defects and what is coming out as environment issues. This is a very important mindset. Environment stability is very, very important. Then you also need to set maximum acceptable environment downtime during formal testing windows. So environments will always be a challenge as you try to stabilize them going through into the project. But there must be some acceptable downtime. It could be 1 hour, 2 hours. It all depends on the challenge that you are facing. So the next mindset is also performance and resilience must be tested before go live. This is very important. Performance and also resilience. By performance, you're benchmarking the system against certain standards. It could be uh, business standards or it could be any international standards. So you want the system, say for example, when you are posting a transaction or you're accepting or authorizing a transaction, you want it to take, say, 15 seconds. Okay. So if it's getting less than 15 seconds, it means there's an issue. You need to adjust that before go live. Then resilience is if there's going to be a setback or there's going to be an issue, how are you going to recover from that? So all this must be done before go live. Normally, performance and resilience you'll find is done towards dress rehearsal because that's when you expose the system to a number of users as compared to just the project users. Then why does it matter? A system that works perfectly for one user in a demo can fail completely, okay? Under the real transaction volumes of live data and branches and channels as well as batch cycles. This is very important. So the reason why you have to do this before go live is there are some transactions which might go through because there's no load, there's no pressure in the system, especially when it comes to EAT, which is user acceptance testing. But when it goes to dress rehearsal, where you're now exposing to a number of people in the bank, because of the load, because of so many concurrent transactions going on, you might find that in terms of performance, you might have issues. So it's also very important to have this mindset as you implement the project. So what goes wrong if this is ignored? The system works in small tests but fails under production. This will be very embarrassing. Remember, during the project, you're not facing the bank's customers, but imagine the bank users, they are now facing the customers, real customers, and then the system is not performing as expected. So what is the correct mindset? CBS performance or core banking system performance must withstand branches, channels, close of business scope, reporting, and also operational load. This is a very important mindset. It must withstand this. If it cannot withstand this, then it means there must be some performance tuning that you have to do. So the real time, the CBS scenario that we are looking at, SIT passes clean, okay, with light transaction volumes. In dress racer also, the end of day batch, they run at expected production volumes for the first time. Then it takes 4 hours longer than the available overtime window that allows, which means during SIT, during testing, NEAT, dress rehearsal, it was working well. But under the actual load in production, it's not working very well. So what action items should we take? Performance and resilience testing should be done early, okay? And still fixes to be done before go live. So it means you have to do a performance and resilience testing is early enough and also fix the issues that might come out of that. Then another action is also to test under realistic production, okay? So this is here, to test under realistic production. This is very important. There are so many tools that you can use to test core banking systems, simulate transactions, and to see the performance. Then the last one is also to include a batch cycle timing explicit in the performance of the test plan. So let's move on to the last one. So the last mindset that you should also apply in this cluster is access, security, backup, monitoring, and disaster recovery are go live requirements. So not technical extracts or technical extras. So what do we mean by this mindset? When it comes to access to environments, when it comes to security, backing up, monitoring, and also disaster recovery, these are go live requirements. I can tell you, even your risk department will not accept you to go live without testing, especially the disaster recovery side, which means you want to be able to recover in case there's an issue in production. So this should not be taken as technical extras. It's something that has to be done in a project environment. So why does it matter? A bank that goes live without proper access controls and monitoring backup and disaster recovery is exposed to operational and securities risk from day one. So this is very important, regardless of how well the core functionality works. So even if the core functionality is working very well, you still need to make sure that there is enough access, security, and also disaster recovery. So why does it matter? The bank goes live without adequate recovery, monitoring, or privileged access controls. So, which means if you don't do this very well, what is going to go wrong is you're going to have a bank that is going to go live without adequate recovery, monitoring, or even access controls. So, this is very important to consider. So, what is the correct mindset as a project manager? The operational control is part of readiness. I can tell you, when you are implementing a core banking system, operational controls should be done from day one. In my projects, I normally push for it to be done from UAT one going forward, which means you have maker, checker, inputter, authorizer in the project. So if you have got maker, checker in the project, you're also controlling because you're trying to simulate exactly what you're going to do when the bank goes live with the system. So let us look at a scenario. So the system goes live successfully, but 3 weeks later, an internal audit finds that a privileged user access was never formally revealed, and there is no tested backup, restoration process or procedure for the new environment. This is very dangerous. So that is why you should have this mindset to make sure that all your security, okay, all your security, your access, the backups, and also monitoring is well managed. So, what are the action items that you can take on this particular mindset? So, the first one is you need to include backup, security, monitoring, disaster recovery as a no-go or go criteria. You cannot go live when you're not able to secure the banking environment. Remember, this is a banking environment. We're dealing with transactions and money. You cannot be even intending to go live when there is no enough backups, there's no monitoring process that you can put, or even disaster recovery. Anything can happen to production environment. You should be able to recover from the disaster recovery side. Then you also need to test disaster recovery and backup restoration procedures, not just document. I've seen so many banks trying to make this mistake. They try to document how they're going to do it. This has to be actually tested. Like what we normally do in our projects. The first dress rehearsal, we do it in the dress rehearsal environment. The second one, we do it from disaster recovery site. And then the last one, we do it in actual production environment or pre-production environment. So it's also very important to test this. You also need to review privileged access controls before go live and not after funding. So this is very important. Before you go live, you have to make sure that people they have the right access, people are taking the right access, and they are doing the right transaction they're supposed to do. It's like you're simulating your production environment. If you don't do this, you'll find that someone who is not supposed to be authorizing is actually authorizing the record. Someone who is not supposed to capture customer records is actually capturing customer records, which is not correct. So it's quite important to make sure that access, security backup, monitoring, and disaster recovery is actually tested during the project. This is a very important mindset.